When I think of defense, the first thing that comes to mind is my dad. He's a 63-year-old Jewish man, and he embodies the stereotype of that kind of person to a really extreme degree. Hanging out with him is like living in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And it doesn't help that my dad is a dead ringer for Larry David, both in his looks and general awkwardness. In terms of fashion, he enjoys wearing those really tight bike shorts that don't hide anything, despite the fact that he's not much of an athlete these days. Since he had back surgery a few years ago, he now moseys along at a pace I like to call the Brucey Shuffle. He only really hangs out at two places now. Sometimes he's on the couch, where he watches endless hours of Shop NBC. That's because he likes to buy watches and bracelets with diamond charms as he stockpiles Hanukkah gifts for me and my brother. He also spends a lot of time on his stationary bike. He goes on this thing for more than an hour every day, but it's set to such a low resistance that it'll spin for 20 minutes without stopping if you lightly tap one of the pedals. There are a few unexpected things about my dad, though. In some ways, he seems really refined. He loves art and opera. He reads a lot of really dense, depressing Russian novels, and I don't know any non-gay men who are as interested in the Bolshoi Ballet as he is. Unfortunately, as soon as you start to talk about defense and safety, my sweet father immediately loses all sense of refinement and takes on the personality of a toothless Arizona militiaman. See, in his mind, defense is the same thing as attack. Which is why he decided to do what any old, ill-equipped, slightly unhinged senior with a patriotic streak would do. He bought a shitload of guns. You see, despite all indications to the contrary, my dad is convinced that he's a natural-born Nazi killer. Even though almost all the Nazis are dead, he spends a good deal of time fantasizing about rushing off to Argentina to take out the last of them before they die of old age in 6 months. Thankfully, he is at least aware that the government is probably not going to recruit him to all former members of the Third Reich. Unfortunately, he's not aware enough to realize that perhaps any current younger Nazi types, which he kindly calls Palestinians, are not going to attack him. My father lives in a very small town, very safe town in Northern California. But somehow he is extremely concerned about gang members, robbers, and of course Palestinians that might be lurking just around the corner of a rolling flower-covered hill. By the way, lest you think that this is your average assortment of firearms, there is an assault rifle that he has bolted to the inside wall of his closet, or as he refers to it, his safe room. Let me give you a tour of his closet/safe room. There are a lot of Argyle vests and khakis, the type that you would expect of any ancient Jewish former golfer, and there's a huge fucking safe that he keeps his heat and ammo in. Luckily, the armory he's constructed for himself is guarded by a vault door that could be attached to any bank if the bank safe door was made of plywood and often came popping out of its flimsy metal trap. It took almost a year after he initially began stockpiling firearms to reveal to me that he had this collection. It's not totally surprising because, as most people who know me will tell you, I don't like guns. I think they're way more likely to kill someone than defend anybody, and if it were up to me, I'd probably sweep the Second Amendment off the books. Despite all of this, at a certain point, my dad became so excited by the idea of it all, or just found it funny enough to torture me with this, that he decided he was going to show me his gun collection. Understandably, I found this situation very concerning. There was no point in asking him who he thought he was defending himself from. I knew it was all of the fake criminals he often complained about. But I did ask him, trying to reason with him on his level, why he needed all of his handguns if he had an assault rifle, or vice versa. The rifle, he explained to me, was not good in close quarters combat, but to take someone out at a distance, it was ideal. At least in his fictional combat scenarios, he is prepared. But in terms of defense, this obviously seems like a terrible one. There was no chance of Bruce being attacked by Palestinians and then killing them before they took out all the Jewry in North America one by one, starting with a retired chiropractor from Culver City. Unfortunately, there was every chance that he might mistake one of the dogs, or a neighbor, or my brother, or me for a Palestinian gang member if he was too quickly woken from one of his all-day naps. It seemed likely that I would survive since I was leaving a day later, and that my brother would be okay because he lives in LA too. But in my heart, I knew that one of his 2 Gordon setters, or the pride and joy of his life, a 3-pound white toy poodle named Phoebe, would be dead before the month was through. And I know it seems like I've been talking about offense, not defense, and in a sense I have. But unfortunately, looking at my father, or the Department of Defense, or the Border Patrol who feel it is their responsibility to shoot at immigrants, you would think that defense just meant premeditated offense. This, obviously, is a huge problem. In jiu-jitsu, a subject which I know nothing about, but for the purposes of this debate will be an expert on, a defensive move is one where you block a strike from your opponent, not one where you shoot them with an assault rifle before you've determined satisfactorily whether your opponent is real or imaginary. Anyway, after a lot of arguing, I finally allowed my dad to show me his gun collection. Or so I thought. See, luckily, nature produced one of the most striking actual defense mechanisms I've ever encountered. Because his memory is not what it used to be, when my dad tried to show me the guns, he couldn't remember the codes and keys for each safer combination. 15 minutes later, I still had yet to see any of the guns except for the assault rifle. Serendipitously, my father's short-term memory loss collided with his obsessive nature to lock up and protect anything, leading to the spectacular fact that he was unable to get to his own guns for almost half an hour. Really, what I think we can learn from this is that defense, whether intentional or not, is the best weapon in your arsenal when it comes to keeping yourself from getting messed up by your own stupid offensive maneuvers.